Very good morning to all of you, my dear students. So this is the last session. That is, if we count together that introductory sessions on cancer and then chemotherapy of cancer, this is the sixth session. So I have divided the topic into multiple sessions for your convenience only. So please try to go through all the videos and then try to understand. If you have any queries, then you can contact me personally. Okay. So this is the last session, which is going to discuss something about the target drug therapy for chemotherapy of cancer. It is a little tough to understand, so please pay attention for that. Targeted drug therapy. Let us see what is this. So I'm going to discuss this topic in the following subheadings, that is immunotherapy, monoclonal antibodies, tyrosine kinase inhibitors, biological response modifiers, proteasome inhibitors, and angiogenesis inhibitors. And at the end, I'll be giving some 10 MCQs which you can answer a little easily. Immunotherapy, let us see what is it. Immune checkpoint inhibitors. The main mechanism of action of this molecule is they block the checkpoint molecules such as programmed death receptors that normally help to keep the immune system in check. By blocking these molecules, the immune system is better able to attack the tumor and cause destruction. Most commonly used molecules under this category are pembrolizumab and nivolumab. These molecules names you have to really mug up. I can't help you in that. But regarding the therapeutic uses, I prepared one slide specifically at the end of both the monoclonal antibodies and then the tyrosine kinase inhibitors also. And the mechanism of action of all these drugs also, I tried to make it as simple as I could. Okay, so here the checkpoint inhibition. That means if you go back to the cell cycle, there are the checkpoints between various stages of the cell cycle. So they check the cells to enter into further phase, that is between G1 and S, there is one checkpoint, and between S and G2, there is another checkpoint. The main intention of checking is that the cells are normal and then they can enter into the cell cycle. This checkpoint is inhibited, then there is like immune system derangement can be there, which has one advantage, another is one disadvantage. That is the main problem with these molecules. So if the cells don't enter into that cell cycle only, there is no proliferation only. Okay, these are all like controversial issue because of these molecules. So ADR are fatal because turning off the immune checkpoints allows attack of the tumor, but can also lead to unchecked autoimmune response to normal tissues. This is the problem. So autoimmune response, immune system gets elevated. Okay, so that itself also gives rise to the damage to the normal cells. So there could be possibility of ADR manifestations like diarrhea, colitis, pneumonitis, hepatitis, nephritis, neurotoxicity, dermatological toxicity, endocrinopathies like hypothyroidism, hyperthyroidism, etc. Treatment can be done with corticosteroid administration. Then coming to the monoclonal antibodies. They have become an active area of drug development for anti-cancer therapy and other non-neoplastic diseases because they are directed at specific targets and often have few adverse effects only when compared to the other cytotoxic drugs. So beta lymphocytes are taken from immunized mice or hamsters and they are fused with immortal B lymphocyte tumor cells. So that there will be resulting of hybrid cells that can be individually cloned, and each clone will produce antibodies directed against a single antigen type. Okay. B lymphocytes from the animals and immortal B lymphocytes from the tumor cells. The normal and the abnormal. So resultant hybrid cells are cloned which can produce antibodies against a single antigen. So recombinant technology has led to the creation of humanized antibodies that overcome the immunologic problems previously observed following administration of mouse or murine antibodies. Examples for this are trastuzumab, rituximab, bevacizumab, and cetuximab. Alemtuzumab is used in the management of refractory B-cell chronic lymphocytic leukemia. Panitumumab is used in the management of metastatic colorectal tumors. Uh, radioiodine 131 tocilizumab is used in the management of relapsed non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And non-neoplastic uses of these monoclonal antibodies are in the management of autoimmune diseases like inflammatory bowel disease, psoriasis, and rheumatoid arthritis. Then coming to the main mechanism of action of these monoclonal antibodies, this monoclonal antibodies is very, 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 very important short note for you. Okay, sometimes you may get even essay also. Binding of the antibody to its target activates the host immune mechanisms, and the cancer cell is killed by complement mediated lysis or by killer T cells. So it's going to combine with the target. The host immune mechanism is stimulated. So because of the elevated immune system or stimulated immune system, complement cascade events are also stimulated, because of which there is lysis or by even killer T cells even. Other monoclonal antibodies attach to and inactivate. This is another mechanism of action. There are various mechanisms of action. Attach to and inactivate growth factors. One is directly targeting the target. Another is targeting the growth factors or their receptors on cancer cells, thus inhibiting the survival pathway and promoting apoptosis. Growth factor inhibition. So advantages of these molecules are highly targeted therapy with minimal ADR. Only that particular area will be getting involved. So minimal ADR, but the main disadvantage is it is highly expensive therapy. Then rituximab. It is the first monoclonal antibody to be approved for the treatment of cancer. Genetically engineered chimeric monoclonal antibody directed against the CD20 antigen that is found on the surfaces of normal as well as malignant B lymphocytes. The main action target is CD20 antigen. Okay. Then mechanism of action is FAB domain of rituximab binds to the CD20 antigen on the B lymphocytes, whereas FC domain recruits immune effector functions in using complement and antibody dependent cell mediated cytotoxicity of the B cells. See, FAB, B ending, B lymphocytes. FC, C for complement. Easy to remember. Okay. Complement mediated cytotoxicity of the B cells. Okay. This is just binding. The antibody is commonly used with other combinations of anti-cancer agents like cyclophosphamide, doxorubicin, vincristine, and prednisone. That is CHOP regimen. Adjuvant agent like that. So this is rituximab. So here we have seen two portions, that is FAB, FC, two domains, FAB and FC domain. So this is the FAB domain which is going to get combined with that of CD20 part of this B cells, CD20 antigens. This is C domain is getting in contact with the complement receptors. They stimulate the complement cascade of events. So complement mediated direct lysis of the tumor cells will happen. This is how this rituximab works. Then ADR, fatal ADR, slow infusion is advisable because of that reason. And other ADR are myelosuppression, hypersensitivity, hypotension, bronchospasm, and angioedema. And it is used in management of lymphoma, CLL, and rheumatoid arthritis. Apart from that, chills and fever commonly accompany the first infusion, especially in patients with high circulating levels of neoplastic cells. This is mainly because of rapid activation of complement, which results in the release of tumor necrosis factor alpha and interleukins. Because of this, the patient complains of chills and fever, for which you can treat the patient with diphenhydramine, acetaminophen, and even corticosteroids if it is too severe. Then comes another problem, that is tumor lysis syndrome, that is reported within 24 hours of the first dose. So this syndrome consists of, this is also 2 marks question. Okay. hyperkalemia, hypocalcemia, hyperuricemia, hyperphosphatemia. An abnormally high content of alkaline phosphatase in the blood, that is hyperphosphatemia, and acute renal failure that may require dialysis. So what happens here? Because of the tumor lysis, so there is a possibility of this hyperkalemia, hypocalcemia, hyperuricemia, and hyperphosphatemia. So all these are the dreadful manifestations because of the tumor lysis only. Excessive number of cells are getting lysed, so they released all these potassium, calcium, uric acid, and alkaline phosphatase, all these things. So it has to be kept in mind. Then alemtuzumab, it targets CD52, used to treat CD52 expressing lymphoid tumors and CLL. It depletes the leukemic and the normal lymphocytes by direct antibody-dependent lysis. Then bevacizumab, recombinant humanized monoclonal anti-VEGF, that is vascular endothelial growth factor antibody, which prevents the latter's binding to the endothelial receptors. So receptor binding is inhibited. So vascular endothelial growth factor binding initiates angiogenesis. Okay. So we are going to inhibit this factor because angiogenesis means it is going to give rise to cancer proliferation because of the new blood vessel growth. So there is a possibility of endothelial cell proliferation and the formation of new blood vessels. So if we inhibit this vascular endothelial growth factor by using bevacizumab, so then it is going to inhibit angiogenesis. So without new blood vessels, the tumor cells can't get oxygen and nutrients, so they can't even grow and even proliferate also. So inhibits angiogenesis and thus retards further growth of all tissues, including the metastasis. Bevacizumab is administered by IV infusion and also intraocular injection in case of acute macular degeneration, directly injected into the eye. That is the most common cause of blindness associated with increased retinal vascularization. So this is the peculiar mode of injection for this molecule. Then most common areas seen are proteinuria, hypertension, thromboembolism. And this molecule is used in the management of metastatic colorectal cancer, breast cancer, malignant mesothelioma, and prostate cancer also sometimes. Then cetumaxomab. It attaches to an epithelial adhesion molecule EpCAM, which is overexpressed in some malignant tissues like malignant ascites in the case of in peritoneal cavity. So the antibody binds to this adhesion molecule because in this case overexpression of this molecule is there. So it goes and binds to that adhesion molecule and also to T lymphocytes and antigen presenting cells, thus facilitating the action of the immune system in clearing the cancer. Then pertuzumab binds to HER2 receptors, inhibits dimerization, blocks HER2 receptor signaling, and then which leads to cell growth arrest. So pertuzumab and trastuzumab, both in combination, can be used as they have like anti-cancer effect, even though they both have different binding sites. Then panitumumab and cetuximab, they are humanized monoclonal antibodies which target EGFR. More than 80% of colorectal cancer patients have highly expressed EGFR, so it is mostly used in the management of metastatic colorectal cancer. Then trastuzumab, otherwise known as Herceptin, which acts on S phase. It is a humanized murine monoclonal antibody that binds to an oncogenic protein termed HER2, the human epidermal growth factor receptor 2, a member of the wider family of receptors with integral tyrosine kinase activity. So there is target is HER2 receptor. So in one sense, we can say it is a humanized cDNA derived antibody against HER2. It is an oncoprotein. So it blocks this receptor and then prevents the tumor growth. Okay. Then overexpression of this receptor is most commonly seen in breast cancer, gastric and esophageal cancers. It also induces cell cycle inhibitors like P21 and P27. So trastuzumab in combination with docetaxel is a good combination, and ADR are similar to the tafasitamab, like nausea, vomiting, fever, hypersensitivity reactions, delayed bone marrow suppression, cardiomyopathy, etc. Cardiomyopathy is very dreadful side effect with this molecule. Then uses. It is used in the management of breast cancer in combination with chemotherapy. Then radioiodine along with tocilizumab, monoclonal antibody labeled with radioiodine. Given IV, it is taken up by more specifically the tumor cells than by normal tissue and gives selective radiation to target cells. It is used in the management of refractory non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So in summary, regarding the monoclonal antibodies, rituximab is used in the management of lymphomas and alemtuzumab also. And bevacizumab and panitumumab are used in the management of metastatic colorectal cancer. And satumaxumab is used in the management of metastatic ascites and trastuzumab in breast cancer. And radioiodine tocilizumab is used in the management of refractory non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. This is a summary of monoclonal antibodies. Then coming to the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, there are around 50 tyrosine kinases which mediate cell growth or cell division by phosphorylation of signaling proteins and thus promote carcinogenesis. So because they promote carcinogenesis, our target is to inhibit these enzymes, tyrosine kinases. They act on signal transduction and cell division. So this is imatinib mesylate is the first tyrosine kinase inhibitor used for the treatment of CML as well as GI stromal tumors. It acts as a signal transduction inhibitor used specifically to inhibit tumor tyrosine kinase activity. That is our target because we are discussing about the target drug therapy. So this is the mechanism of action of tyrosine kinase inhibitors. This is the tyrosine kinase enzyme. So when it is stimulated or activated, so it gets phosphorylated. So phosphorylated tyrosine kinase means it is active. So this will lead to tumor cell proliferation. So our idea is to suppress this tumor cell proliferation. So whatever the steps are involved in this, we are going to inhibit. So tyrosine kinase enzyme we are going to inhibit. That is our target. So that the phosphorylation step is inhibited and further tumor cell proliferation is inhibited. So no signaling, then apoptosis and G1 arrest will happen. So cancer will be arrested. So most of the patients with CML have a translocated shortened chromosome 22 term, the Philadelphia chromosome. This translocation creates a tyrosine kinase fusion gene called BCR-ABL gene, which phosphorylates effector proteins. So this is most commonly BCR-ABL gene overexpression is seen in patients suffering from CML. Okay, so which is going to phosphorylate effector proteins, further aiding cell division. So imatinib mesylate is going to specifically binding to the BCR-ABL gene and blocks the phosphorylation. So this is the main step that is involved. So phosphorylation is blocked, then all the cascade of events of cell proliferation are blocked. In case of GI stromal tumors, an unregulated expression of tyrosine kinase is associated with a growth factor. That is another action. So here, the ability of imatinib to occupy the kinase pocket prevents the phosphorylation of tyrosine on the substrate molecule and thus inhibits subsequent steps that lead to cancer proliferation, cell proliferation. So in either way, whatever may be the target here, it is unregulated expression of tyrosine kinase. There, the gene, modified gene is seen in case of CML. So ultimate target is tyrosine kinase has to be inhibited. Okay. It is well absorbed orally, highly protein bound. Plasma half-life is 18 hours and that of its active metabolite is about 40 hours metabolized in the liver. ADR are like nausea, vomiting, edema, muscle cramps, diarrhea, neutropenia, thrombocytopenia, and increased hepatic aminotransferases. And it is used in the management of CML, both in acute phase and chronic phase. So chronic phase, it induces a complete hematological remission as well as complete cytogenic remission also. In acute phase, it acts specifically in blast crisis. Then drug interactions, imatinib inhibits hepatic macrosomal enzymes and may increase the serum concentration of warfarin, whereas administration of itraconazole or erythromycin may increase its plasma concentration because they are enzyme inducers. The nilotinib, it is also a tyrosine kinase inhibitor, first line option for CML, available as oral formulations. associated with the toxicities like fluid retention and QT prolongation, used in the management of CML only. In case the patient is resistant to imatinib, then we have to choose this nilotinib. Then dasatinib, it is a multiple tyrosine kinase inhibitor. The avatar, you can remember, multiple means. It is active against all phases of CML and Philadelphia chromosome positive ALL also. Lapatinib, oral inhibitor of HER2 and EGFR1, used to treat metastatic breast cancer. And ponatinib is claimed to be useful in subjects resistant to even these drugs also. Crizotinib, it inhibits anaplastic lymphoma kinase associated with metastatic non-small small cell lung cancer. If the patient is intolerant to this crizotinib, then we can go for certinib. Certinib. Then gefitinib and erlotinib, epidermal growth factor receptors, tyrosine kinase inhibitors. So they are well absorbed orally, undergo extensive metabolism in the liver by the CEIP3A4 isoenzyme. And adverse effects that these molecules produce are nausea, diarrhea, acne like skin rash and ocular disorders, and interstitial lung disease. They're used in the management of non-small cell lung cancer and pancreatic cancer. Then sorafenib and sunitinib, oral serine or threonine and tyrosine kinase inhibitors. They target cell surface kinases that are involved in tumor signaling and angiogenesis and apoptosis, thus slowing tumor growth. ADR are common like diarrhea, fatigue, and hand-foot syndrome. So hand-foot syndrome is seen with which molecule? That is another MCQ. Hypertension. Then used in the management of renal cell carcinoma. Then sorafenib also used in hepatocellular carcinoma. Sunitinib is also used in the GI stromal tumors and pancreatic neuroendocrine tumors. Then in summary, regarding the tyrosine kinase inhibitors, imatinib mesylate used for CML and GI stromal tumors, nilotinib and dasatinib for CML, and dasatinib also for AML. Lapatinib for metastatic breast cancer, crizotinib for lung cancer, gefitinib and erlotinib for lung and pancreatic cancer, then sorafenib and sunitinib for renal cancer. Then coming to the biological response modifiers. These are the naturally occurring substances which regulate cell function, are increasingly used to treat cancer like cytokines and interferons, natural in the body. So cytokines, they're produced in response to a variety of stimuli like virus infection or cancer, whatever it may be, such as any antigen stimulation. These substances regulate cell growth and activity and immune responses and can be synthesized even by DNA recombinant technology outside. Then interleukins. They stimulate proliferation of T lymphocytes and activate natural killer cells. Interleukin 2 is used in metastatic renal cell carcinoma. An attenuated strain of Mycobacterium bovis used to prepare the BCG vaccine for immunization against tuberculosis, and it can also be combined with this therapy. And then interferons, classified into three types: alpha, beta, and gamma, based on their antigenicity. Alpha interferons are primarily leukocytic, beta and gamma interferons are produced by connective tissue fibroblasts and T lymphocytes respectively. So they are also produced by DNA recombinant techniques in bacteria, that is interferon alpha 2A and 2B for treating neoplastic diseases. Interferon alpha 2A is used in hairy cell leukemia, CML, and AIDS-related Kaposi sarcoma, whereas 2B is used in hairy cell leukemia, melanoma, AIDS-related Kaposi sarcoma, and follicular lymphoma. Then coming to the interferons, this is also very, very, very important short note for you. Interferons interact with surface receptors on other cells at which site they exert their effects. So when they bind with this, they are neither internalized nor degraded. So because of the consequences of binding, a series of complex intracellular reactions takes place, which include like synthesis of enzymes, suppression of cell proliferation, activation of macrophages, and increased cytotoxicity of lymphocytes. This is how the interferons are going to act in the body, just by binding. Okay, acting with the surface receptors on other cells, and then giving rise to cascade of events within the cell. So they can be administered through IM, subcutaneous, or IV administration. Then they undergo glomerular filtration and are degraded during reabsorption, but liver metabolism is minimal. They produce IDR manifestations like flu-like symptoms, GI upset, suicidal ideation, and seizures. Interferon alpha indeed is used in the management of chronic granulocytic leukemia, hairy cell leukemia, renal cell carcinoma, AIDS-related Kaposi sarcoma, and melanoma recurrence. Then hematopoietic growth factors are also used, which are otherwise known as cell colony stimulating factors. They are used to assist recovery of leukopenic patients on cancer chemotherapy, like for example, filgrastim, that is a recombinant human granulocyte mature, not mature, human granulocyte colony stimulating factor, and molgramostim, that is recombinant human granulocyte macrophage colony stimulating factor. Then coming to the proteasome inhibitors, these are large proteolytic complexes of the cell which play a role in the normal turnover of proteins. The regulation of cellular proteins like P53 protein is required to maintain cell cycle, progression, growth, and survival. So the proteins to be destroyed are linked to ubiquitin and delivered to proteasome. So then these proteasomes have 20S proteolytic core bearing active sites like chymotrypsin-like, trypsin-like, and capsid-like sites. So the inhibition of these sites lead to intercellular aggregation of unwanted proteins in the cells. This induces apoptosis and cell cycle arrest. So these proteasome inhibitors means just by binding to them, those sites only just inhibits apoptosis, induces apoptosis. So that's how cell cycle is being arrested. So bortezomib, first proteasome inhibitor used in multiple myeloma. Multiple myeloma cells produce very large quantities of proteins, which make them unusually susceptible to this drug. The more number of proteins, much of inhibition. Carfilzomib, a selective irreversible proteasome inhibitor effective in myeloma refractory to bortezomib. So these proteasome inhibitors are highly effective. These agents are given along with immunomodulators such as lenalidomide. So this molecule produces adverse effects like fatigue, vomiting, diarrhea, fever, dyspnea, peripheral neuropathy, and myelosuppression. Then coming to the angiogenesis inhibitors. So we have like naturally occurring angiogenesis inhibitors like thrombospondin, interferon, and metalloproteinase inhibitors, and tumor-derived inhibitors like angiostatin and endostatin. Two types of classification are there. Then, apart from that, pharmacological inhibitors like thalidomide, which we have already discussed, and carboxyamidotriazole, and then synthetic inhibitors like synthetic protease inhibitors and anti-adhesive peptides. So these are the four types of inhibitors of angiogenesis that are available. Then coming to the multiple choice question. So here by this I have entered the anti-cancer drugs or chemotherapy of cancer. So hope you'll go through in detail at your leisure time all the sessions. If you go through the cancer disease and chemotherapy also, you'll get an overall picture. And even if you get a question on chemotherapy of cancer or cancer induced toxicity, cytotoxic induced toxicity, chemotherapy induced toxicity in one way, so you can write the questions very easily. So apart from that, so all the questions, all the drugs can be given either as essay questions or short notes, even 2 marks questions, which I have mentioned during my discussion itself. So apart from that, I'm just giving few multiple choice questions which you can try, which are very easy to answer. So here, number 1 is a patient is about to undergo 3 cycles of chemotherapy prior to surgery for bladder cancer. Which one of the following best describes chemotherapy in this setting? Bladder. 3 cycles of chemotherapy prior to surgery. So this is being discussed in chemotherapy, cancer chemotherapy discussion. So you have to go through if you want to answer this one. Then second one, a 45-year-old male patient is being treated with ABVD chemotherapy for Hodgkin's lymphoma. He presents for cycle 4 of a planned 6 cycles with a new onset cough. He states it started a week ago and he also feels like he has a little trouble catching his breath. Which drug in the ABVD regimen is the most likely cause of his pulmonary toxicity. This also we have discussed among the drugs. Then a patient is about to begin therapy with doxorubicin and cyclophosphamide. Which test should be ordered for baseline assessment before treatment? Cyclophosphamide. Just try to think about doxorubicin combination. Then a 64-year-old male about to undergo therapy for rhabdomyosarcoma. His chemotherapy includes ifosfamide. Which of the following is most appropriate to include in chemotherapy orders for this patient? So order, how you are going to first do the patient. So leucovorin or avihydration or allopurinol, which one has to be started with first? Development of signs of which condition should be monitored in patients receiving chemotherapy with ifosfamide. So it produces some specific toxicity. What is that? Okay. Then, which chemotherapy drug can cause nephrotoxicity, neurotoxicity, ototoxicity, electrolyte abnormalities, severe nausea, and vomiting? That is also another question. A patient was mistakenly administered vincristine instead of cytarabine intrathecally. What is the likely outcome of this drug error? Okay. Then, the appearance of a facial rash with cetuximab is associated with which of the following? Facial rash with cetuximab. Negative response to therapy, positive response to therapy, drug allergy, or infusion reaction. Then rituximab is an agent that requires a slow initial infusion due to the possibility of an infusion reaction, which is believed to be the cause of this reaction. That requires a slow initial infusion due to the possibility of an infusion reaction, because of which we have to go for slow administration. What is the reason for that? Then patients should receive antiviral prophylaxis for herpes zoster while undergoing treatment with which agent for multiple myeloma? Okay. So these are all the multiple choice questions that you can try to answer. You can easily answer. I know well. Okay. So with this, we end our the anti-cancer drugs and chemotherapy of cancer and cancer disease in detail. So the chemotherapy of cancer is covered now in all the 6 sessions. So please go through in detail. Try to take the advantage of this lockdown and then try to understand. And if you have any doubts, you can just contact me personally. Thank you. Thank you all. And next time will be in the next month, I'll be speaking on corticosteroids topic in 2 sessions. I don't know how many sessions I'll take, but 2 sessions are given to me because it is online teaching. I will try to slightly elaborate it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all.